This is Sean with Voices of Racing, and I have the president of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, Doug Boles. We're going to be honoring the Unsers and wishing Al a happy birthday. Doug, why don't you say, hello to everyone and to Al and what you'd like to say to him his birthday, and then we're going to go into some memories.
You got it, Sean. First of all, thanks for having me. And secondly, and maybe most importantly, happy birthday, Unser Jr. You're turning 60. I'm a few years behind you, so I'm going to be calling you every week to let you know how the 60s are, because I'm going to have to follow you into it. But thank you so much for all you've done for our sport. You continue to be, and you know this, you continue to be one of the most popular drivers we've ever had. You led 110 laps here. You've won 2 races. You've sat on the pole. Your career spanned a long time. You ran here 20 years. There were a few years because of that split you weren't here. You are one of the most prolific drivers, one of the most prolific personalities our sport has ever had. Thank you for continuing to love our sport, and especially the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and the Indy 500 like you do. Happy birthday.
All right, so here's the first shot. So you sent them across the world for the 100th centennial celebration. If you could kind of speak to this and just how that all came about.
Well, it was one of the things, as we're starting to really engage troops and everybody that's in America and get them excited about it. One of the cool things was sending these drivers, especially Al, we had Davey in there, getting them to go around the world. But troops are so much a part of what happens on race day. The Armed Forces Radio Network forever has carried the Indianapolis 500. And especially in the 90s when Al was winning races, those troops really knew and appreciated Al. So sending Al out there to thank our troops, but also to give the demonstration of a 2-seat Indy car actually driving up and down the Air Force runways was a really cool way to promote the Indianapolis 500, but more importantly, to allow our soldiers, those men and women who are serving our country, to get to know one of the greatest race car drivers in the world, and Unser Jr.
All right, so this next shot is actually at Michigan, but it's got Roger Penske Jr., Mario Andretti, Michael Andretti, Bobby Unser Jr., Al Unser, and Al Unser Jr. So you've been able to get to know the fathers and the sons over the years. What would you like to say about this photo, and just also Penske's involvement coming in and just the incorporation with the Unsers?
Well, the cool thing about this photo is just that it really is almost like 2 generations of the Mount Rushmore of open wheel motorsport. You think about Roger and Mario and Bobby and Al, what they meant to our sport. But then when you go down the next level, you got Roger Jr., who's still involved here with the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. But when you take the Andretti, the Unser, and the Unser kids, it really is sort of that next generation. And what was so cool about the sport in that day is the younger generation got to race against the older generation as they were coming up. That photo is a pretty spectacular photo, I think, and really says a lot about that handing off of the baton to the next generation. And each of those folks are still obviously involved in our sport. Really great photo.
Yeah, when we talked to Mario Andretti, he said it was just one of those situations that they were all there and they knew they needed to take it because it wasn't going to be that many situations that they were all together with the fathers and the sons, let alone being on the track. So this is an epic moment, the closest finished in the Indy 500 history with Junior and Goodyear in '92. If you'd like to speak to this.
Well, there's no better radio call in the history of the Indy 500 than the last few laps of that Indianapolis 500. I still remember that day because it was such a cold day. And I know Al probably remembers it because he's driving that Galmer. And the Galmer was not the car to have at that point in time. So when you paired Galmer with the talent of Al Unser Jr., that's what gave that car an opportunity to win the Indianapolis 500. And I'm sure those last few laps he was holding his breath because he was making that car do things that it really wasn't able to do on its own. And our crowd, I still remember the crowd just roaring with excitement that we had the next generation of an Unser winning at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And it was just the beginning of, or really was kind of in the middle of Al being so competitive, but really the beginning of what was going to be 5 years of when you came to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, you knew if you wanted to win, you had to beat Al Unser Jr.
Right, and here's the shot, I believe in '92. This is the first year, drinking the milk, and you see his kids there in the shot as well. And then this is the next one in '94. Do you remember this one as well? And what would you like to speak for his second winning?
I do remember that one as well, and I think all of us remember that one. A lot of it because the car, kind of affectionately known now as the Beast, was such an unbelievable race car. I think Al Jr. Was seeing top speeds of nearly 250 miles an hour with that car as he was going into turn 1 and turn 3. So it was a super, super fast race car. And for Al to pick up the win in that, and I can't look at, it's hard to look at these two victory lane photos and not think about maybe some of the most iconic words ever spoken at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And they were by Al Unser Jr. And it was, "You just don't know what Indy means." And that still lives to this day. And like I said, there's not really very many more statements other than maybe "Gentlemen, start your engines," that are as powerful as what Al said. And he said it from the heart. And so we talk about that all the time. You just don't know what Indy means. And Al really coined that, and still seeing the excitement of him. So when I see him in victory lane, either one of those years, I just think of, I know that smile on Al Unser Jr.'s face is because he knows what Indy means.
All right, so here's a shot of his dad and him looking at a signed checkered flag. Do you happen to know what this situation is? If not, just speak a little bit about Al Sr.
So my guess on the flag, so what happens every year is the checkered flag that's actually used for waving to the winner is signed by the entire starting field. So my guess is that is either, my guess is it's one of the flags that probably Al was given when he won the Indianapolis 500, signed by everybody that he competed against. So that's one of the traditions as a winner here. You get the checkered flag that was actually used when you crossed the yard of bricks, and it's signed by you and your other 32 competitors. So my guess is he and Al are going through trying to figure out who's what, because some people's signatures are harder to read than others. But you can't look at that photo without just feeling like there are two people, father and son, who love the Indianapolis Motor Speedway more than just about life itself. And having lost Al Unser Sr. Last year makes it even more difficult for all of us. And I know that that picture is something that Al will treasure, and as well as all the memories that he had with his dad and the talent that his dad passed along to him.
So if you were going to describe Al Sr.'s driving style compared to Junior, and if you were going to bring Bobby in it, but how would you just kind of describe the differences in them on the track?
Well, I think there's probably, they all three had their own characteristics for sure. But I think Al Sr. and Al Jr. were more alike in the sense that it wasn't necessarily about qualifying on the pole. For them, it was really about, how do I win the race? How am I the fastest in the race? And they did it really in a quiet manner. The two of them, a little bit more quiet out of the car. Bobby obviously was a huge personality outside the car. He loved to sort of pick on people. And Bobby was the first to tell you that he was the greatest race car driver to ever live. Where I think Al Sr. and Al Jr. said, let Uncle Bobby talk, or brother Bobby talk. We're just going to go demonstrate it in the race car and on the racetrack. And that's one of the things that I think people really loved about Al Sr. and certainly loved about Al Jr. is that they were just fast. What I loved about Al Jr. too, he wasn't just an oval race car driver. You think about his domination at Long Beach over the years. You could put him on a road course and he was just as fast there as an oval. He didn't have a deficiency in his driving style. It didn't matter what he was in. I remember seeing him run the Daytona 500 as well. And you just don't do that. You just don't go from IndyCar, hop in a car at Daytona and compete and make the show. And that's the talent that Al Unser Jr. had. And you think about Al Sr. Al Sr. had that same talent. Very, very versatile race car drivers. It didn't matter the car or the race course. They both could be competitive right away.
So here's a shot of Sarah Fisher and Bobby. It's actually at the Chili Bowl. What's some situations with Bobby, and how would you kind of describe him compared to Al Sr.?
Well, for sure, Bobby was the colorful character. Al was much quieter. He let his driving do the talking. He had a great smile, but he was just, sort of more reserved. Bobby was anything but reserved, and you can see that in his face right there. I'm sure he's telling Sarah a story that's probably not an appropriate story to tell, but that was how Bobby was. He was just such a big personality. One of the things I loved over the last a few years here at the Speedway is Bobby and Lisa always came to the 500 and brought his motorhome. And I had at least one day during the month of May go sit in the motorhome with Bobby and listen to his stories. The guy could tell stories better than anybody. And at some level, there may not have been a better color commentator in our history for our IndyCar series than Bobby. He was just colorful. And the other thing I loved about him, he told it like he saw it. Whether it was wrong or right, you knew where you stood with Bobby Unser.
Well, just a side thought, do you think there's ever going to be a possibility for a family to accomplish what they've been able to accomplish with 9 wins between the three of them and for the future of the Speedway?
You know, you never say never. But what the Unsers have accomplished here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, what the Unsers have accomplished at Pikes Peak Hill Climb, those two iconic international events are dominated throughout the year by the Unser family. I would suggest that maybe the more likely thing to happen is that some future generation of an Unser continues to do what Bobby and Al Jr. have set forth here at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Hopefully there are other families that can do that, but it would be hard to not say that the Unser family is the first family of IndyCar racing in the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
All right, so here's a shot of all three of them, you know, and it's Al's 60th birthday coming up next week on the 19th. Just in general, what would you like to say to them? And also, you know, Al's married to Norma, and Norma's been working with me on this whole project of getting almost 60 different interviews compiled of all the people's favorite memories of them. So what, just in closing, what would you like to say to Al for his 60th, and also just in general to honor the Unsers? And if you'd like to say anything about what's coming this year for the Speedway as well.
Well, Al knows this. There isn't anybody who's meant more to the Speedway than Al, and it really goes back to his passion for it, his connection to the Unser family. But then it goes back to that quote, "You just don't know what Indy means." And our fans loved Al to begin with, but they really fell in love with him when they knew that he knew what Indy meant. And that's why we get 300,000 plus fans that come here every May. They want to cheer for somebody who knows what Indy meant. So, you know, Al can still walk up and down pit lane and people screaming and yelling at him. They can't wait to get a chance to say hello to him. Just one of our most popular drivers in the history of our, 113 years that this Indianapolis Motor Speedway has been around. As for Norma, I think most of us think she's crazy, that she's putting up with him. But I also know that most of us are really, really excited that Al and Norma have found each other. What a great couple. I had some time, got to spend some time with Norma during the National Motorsport Hall of Fame. We sat at a table together while Al was actually participating as part of it and giving a speech. And what a great couple. And it's just so exciting to see them both so happy. And what better way to celebrate your 60th birthday, Al Jr., than to celebrate it with a special woman like Norma.
All right. Well, Doug, I really appreciate your time, and I'm looking forward to this year at the Speedway. I know that there's a lot going on, and it's going to be very exciting, and we're just about a month away from the big one. So would you like to say anything about what's going to be happening for the 500 before we close out?
Well, we're just getting ready for that 106th running of the Indy 500 presented by Gamebridge. We can't wait. The exciting thing, two exciting things for me. It'll be the first time since 2019 that we've been allowed to fill the place. So we'll have over 300,000 people here on race day. Ticket sales are going fantastic. But maybe more importantly, and Al knows this because he worked, all three of the Unsers that shown there worked for Roger Penske at one point in time. Roger has never experienced an Indianapolis 500 without some sort of restriction since he's purchased the Speedway. So I know we all can't wait to put on a proper Indianapolis 500 and celebrate and thank Roger Penske for helping take what the Holman George family did over the last 75 years and take it to the next level. So looking forward to that. So don't miss out. If you haven't figured out how to get here yet, don't miss out on Roger Penske's first Indianapolis 500 as owners, when we can let everybody that wants to be here inside the gates. And I appreciate Sean letting you have me on. I can't wait to see Al and pick on him since he's a little bit older. He got to that 60 age before I did.
Well, again, I appreciate your time. This is Sean Kirker with Voices of Racing, honoring the Unsers. And Doug, I hope you have a beautiful day, and hopefully we'll see you at the birthday.
We'll see you there.
All right. Thank you. I'm going to close this one out.